These are the recorded lectures for Week 1 topic viruses. There are a few things I just want to say that I'll have to waste a little bit of time on, and that is I like to, as you can tell right now, I'm just using a regular pointer. So when I want to talk about the fact that viruses are acellular, I just kind of move my pointer over there. But there are going to be times that I want to use my pen to underline something or highlight something. And I have problems with that for some reason with this program. So that I'm not going to need to do that for a while, but if I do, I just want to warn you ahead of time. It may take a little bit of time for me to actually, I'll kind of show you. See where it says pointer options? I can choose pen and then the pen doesn't show up. So I have to keep on doing it, and then the pen will actually work. So I don't mean to waste time, but that I just want to let you know that. So let's talk about viruses, not computer problems, technical difficulties. So viruses are acellular. That means they are not cellular. You probably know that the prefix a in front of a word means it's not cellular. That means viruses are not made of cells. And what that also means is that, well, I won't say it because that's going to come on a different slide. They are parasites, meaning that they live off of a host. If we can say that they're alive, but they need a host in order to infect organisms. They cannot divide. Now, the host cell can reproduce them, can make more of them, replicate them, but they cannot divide like cells can through mitosis or meiosis. They need a host cell to replicate or reproduce, and that host cell can be really all types of living things, including viruses can infect bacteria. If they do, they're called a bacteriophage. And viruses can infect plants, as you can see here. This picture on the left is a picture of the tobacco mosaic virus, or for short, they call it TMV. And it can infect more than just the tobacco plant. Over here on the right, you see orchid leaves and how they look when they are at different stages, when they are infected with the tobacco mosaic virus. So viruses can infect animals, we know that. And viruses can also infect fungi. In fact, we can make use of that to destroy fungal infections sometimes. Okay, so now I made this slide and made like a little chart. So to answer the question, are viruses alive? Let's look at the characteristics of living things or living organisms and compare that to the characteristics of viruses. To be considered a living thing, an organism has to be composed of at least one cell. So that's down here, unicellular or multicellular, meaning many cells. So this kind of already answers the question whether viruses are alive, because viruses are not cellular. They are not composed of even one cell. But look at some other things. Living things are composed of, we learned this, the biological macromolecules, carbohydrates, or carbs for short, proteins, nucleic acids, and lipids. Living organisms in their cells, they also have different enzymes to carry out or to speed up, act as catalyst to many, many chemical reactions that go on in the living cells. And then viruses only have a nucleic acid and a protein. Nucleic acid is in the core, and the protein composes the outside of the virus, and the protein kind of encloses the nucleic acid. Now, cells can divide by mitosis or meiosis or both, and organisms can reproduce on their own by mating or asexually, but viruses cannot reproduce without a host cell. Organisms metabolize. Metabolize means they can break down chemicals and they can synthesize their own molecules. Viruses can't do that. Whatever viruses are composed of, they can't change. They don't take that the wrong way. Their nucleic acid core can mutate, and that means that the characteristics of the virus will change. But what I mean is viruses can't carry out chemical reactions. They can't carry out, for example, photosynthesis or cellular respiration, or the reactions that break down food molecules, or the reactions that build molecules like hormones and structural proteins and that kind of thing. Living organisms also grow and viruses cannot. So to answer the question, are viruses alive? You probably figured this out. Way before now, viruses are not considered living things. No, they are not alive. Okay, so you do need to know on here, and now I'm going to try my pen. Oops. I'm going to try my pointer. It might take a few minutes. Okay, pointer options, and let's just hope this works. See, you can see the little red dot, so it should, if I try to underline, it should draw a line. I just did that whole speech for nothing. No, I've been playing around with it for a little bit. I actually did a recording earlier and I deleted it and started over. But you do need to know the term virion, which is a single virus particle. For example, this in picture A, this is a virion. It's actually one that attacks bacteria, so we call it a bacteriophage. I don't see that word on here anywhere, bacteriophage, so I'll do my best. I don't have a pen. This is not a touch screen, so I'm doing this with my hands. Bacteriophage is the name for a virus that infects bacteria. Bacteriophages are very complex. As you can see, the one in the picture on the left kind of looks like a spaceship. That is an A. I don't have pretty handwriting in general, but definitely not when I'm having to do it this way. And I won't be doing this very often. I just wanted you to see that name. And if I see it in here in the reading, I'm going to be so mad. But anyway, this particular virion is a bacteriophage, and it is infecting a bacterium. And what you can see here is the size of the bacteria. This bacterium here, you're only seeing a portion of it, this portion here that covers the covers half of the image. So the dark portion is the bacterium. This bacterium, in comparison to human cells, these are human intestinal cells that you see in picture B. This is one cell that lines the intestines. So in comparison to eukaryotic cells or human cells, the bacteria these are oval shaped. So we will call them bacillus, and these are actually E. coli bacteria. And so this is how small they are compared to human cells, and this is how small a virus is compared to those bacteria. Okay, you do need to know that you can only see viruses under using an electron microscope, and that it just says a little bit about classification, and we are going to talk about classification in a minute. One thing that I do want you to know, though, is that viruses don't always have DNA as their nucleic acid or as their genetic, genetic material that contains their genes. Sometimes viruses have RNA. You may know that because the COVID-19 coronavirus is an RNA virus. RNA viruses they mutate a lot faster, and they're a lot more difficult to make a vaccine for. So let's move on. It says theories on the origins of viruses. This is really a very bad use of the word theory. These are really hypotheses. These are not theories. Theories have enough evidence that we consider them to be proven. But these are just more like educated guesses. These are hypotheses. Anyway, the devolution or regressive hypothesis is one hypothesis of how viruses originated. You do have some questions on your quiz about these hypotheses. So the devolution, always look for the word evolved, proposes that viruses actually evolved from free living cells. And so it's like they de-evolved because they're so much simpler than a cell. So evolved from free living cells. And then the escapist or progressive hypothesis says that only the nucleic acid escaped cells. So the DNA or the RNA escaped from a host cell, and the virus developed that way, evolved that way. And then there's a self-replication hypothesis. That proposes that a system of self-replication similar to that of other self-replicating molecules, evolving alongside the cells they rely on as host, kind of like coevolution, kind of like the bees and other pollinators have co-evolved along with plants. Plants have evolved bright colors and scents or smells to attract the pollinators, and then the pollinators have evolved, long proboscis to get to the inside of the flower, and they have evolved bees have evolved little dances that they perform to tell other bees the location of the flowers. So they have evolved together over the years. And so this self-replication hypothesis is kind of based on that. Then we have viral morphology. So morphology just means form or structure. We know viruses are not cellular. A single virus particle or virion consists of at least two things. The core is a nucleic acid, so it's either RNA or DNA. And then the core is surrounded by a capsid, which is a protein coating. And this is what a virion must be made of at least, but sometimes the virion will contain an outer envelope. And that outer envelope is made of protein and phospholipid membranes that were actually derived from the host cell by the process of phagocytosis and exocytosis. So, and then it talks about how viruses have lots of different shapes, which we will be going into that later. But the capsid part, the protein part that surrounds the nucleic acid core, is composed of structures called capsomeres. So we will stop here.